Welcome along to Betting Weekly Extra Time, European edition. You're with Dan Roebuck alongside me, as per usual, Steve Wyss and James Eastham. Steve, we had the Champions League, of course, in midweek, and the general consensus amongst bettors, it was a challenging Tuesday and Wednesday, but 6 winning favourites, 5 at minus money. Should we have done a little bit better? Did you do better? I don't know.
I was terrible in the Champions League. It was a really bad round for me. It felt like a lot of the sort of logical outcomes didn't happen. And I know you say there are a lot of favourites won, but not a lot of the favourites were kind of fancied in general, either by the bettors, by the public. So I don't know, it was a bit of a strange one. I really struggled. And quite a few strong individual performances kind of skew-whiffed a lot of the stats. I mean, Alisson, for example, in that game. I mean, the own goal for Club Brugge, stuff like that. So I don't know. I just think I've always said this, on the highest stage, on the highest level, individual performances can stand out and can make a huge difference, and that was proven.
James, spoiler alert, none of the Champions League teams are featured in official picks this week. Was that a conscious decision from yourself, do you think?
Yeah, I just wrote ignore in big notes on my weekend fixture list, Dan, next to any team that played in the Champions League this week. I think when the turnaround in Europe is 2 or 3 weeks apart between the first leg and the second leg, it's not too bad. But with a very quick turnaround between the first legs and the second legs this time, I'm not interested in getting involved with Champions League teams this weekend in the league, because I think their minds will still be on Europe, and there are still some ties which are up for grabs. Obviously, in France, PSG, Liverpool is still alive. The Borussia Dortmund Lille tie is still alive. So, yeah, it's very hard to know how much focus those managers and those players who are in the Champions League will put on this weekend's fixtures in their domestic programs.
What you shouldn't ignore is the boys' selections. It was a profitable weekend last weekend, bouncing back with some really nice hot dog plays. A reminder of the P&L up on screen for you so far, as we start to move into the final third of the season, I guess it is now. Get your comments in via YouTube. What are you betting this weekend across the continental action in the 4 major leagues outside of the Premier League? Always good to know. And we'll hand over the weekend to give us our thoughts on your plays and vice versa, of course. And don't forget to sign up to our newsletter, bettingweeklystudios.com. And, of course, we're on Instagram and Twitter at Because We Win. Saturday, we start with Steve's 1 unit pick here. It's in Italy. It's Parma against Torino. It's a 9 a.m. kickoff on Saturday Eastern here. Torino are the favourites, but only just. But Steve, this is a trend that you're going for, that you've picked up on very early. Maybe the bookmakers haven't picked up upon it just yet. Talk us through your Parma-Torino play.
Yes, under 2.5 goals. Again, second straight week here. This is minus 134. You could even go under 2.25 Asian goals if you wanted to, at plus 102 here, because I think this will be quite a low-scoring game. Everything that I said last week about Parma applies again. Christian Kivu, the new manager, has come in and he's completely changed the identity of them, really. It's quite obvious that they're going to try and defend their way out of this relegation scrap. And I think the noticeable thing against Udinese last week was how little that Parma offered going forwards. I think there was maybe one shot on target, proper shot on target, if you know what I mean, as in big chances. But for the most part, they were pretty toothless. And when they went 1-0 down, they didn't go gung-ho, open up and try and get back in the game. They were structured still. And, eventually sort of last 5 or 10 minutes, then they gave it a little bit more of a go. That's the sort of, I think as an underdog, that's how they're going to operate. And, this game here is in terms of the actual betting, they are a slight dog again. So, I mean, if they play someone like Monza or a team down the bottom, then we might have to just look at the strategy here. But until that happens, I think let's just keep backing the under 2.5 train. And I'm really surprised we can actually get decent odds for this, because Torino have the most under 2.5 goal games in Serie A. So the actual opposition here play very much, we know they lack goals. I think the fourth worst expected goals for Torino. At the same time, at the other end of the field, they tend to defend reasonably well. And this has all the makings of another tight game. And I thought the goal line really would be about 2. So we're actually getting, we can still get under 2.5 at minus 134. I do think that price will crash. I think this might kick off about minus 150. under 2.5 goals, which is still a good bet, in my opinion, because this Parma team is nothing. Forget Parma's seasonal results overall. Just focus on the metrics and the performance of the last 2 games, because Christian Kiewu's coming in and he's operating in a system which is like night and day compared to before. So, yeah, again, 1 unit play. Cash for me last week. Parma against Torino, under 2.5 goals at -134.
We are still ahead of the curve when it comes to Kivu. Marseille Lens next up, 3:05 on Saturday Eastern. In France, obviously, Ligue Marseille are short price favourites at -180. Lens are +440 here. We've got James's 2-unit play coming up here. And we've got a lean from Steve as well. Very, very similar plays here. James, Marseille back on track last weekend with that win over Nantes after the aberration of the Auxerre loss. They're aiming for a 4th straight home win, but we're not going to play them on the money line because they're too short. So what's the bet?
Yeah, the bet is Marseille on the Asian handicap with a -0.75 goal start, which is available at -139. So, yeah, if they win by a single goal, then you'll make a profit with half of your stakes. And if they go on and win by a couple of goals or more, then you will win with your full stakes. -139 is a decent price, I think, and it is my 2-unit play. I want to talk really, though, about Lens because they were the biggest factor for me on this game. When the window was open, the transfer window in January, Dan, we said there were going to be teams who came out of that window noticeably weaker than how they'd gone into it. And in League One, Lens are that team. So just to recap, or for maybe people who don't know, Lens play a goalkeeper and a back 5. They sold 4 members of their defence during the January transfer window. Now, I'm going to leave the right wing back out of it, Frankowski, who went off to Turkey because they've actually got quite a good replacement in that position. But the other 3 players they sold were Brice Samba, France's number 2 goalkeeper, who went to Rennes. And then they sold a couple of their centre-backs into the Premier League, Kevin Danso, who went to Tottenham, and Kusanov, who went to Manchester City. Lens did not replace any of those 3 players. So they basically had to promote people who were not playing that much in the first half of the season into their starting 11. It's as simple as that. They've got a lot weaker through selling players. And if you look at the stats on Lens defensively, the degree to which they've collapsed really since the window is incredible. If you look at their 4 games since the 1st of February, they've conceded 11 goals. Up until that point, they were conceding less than a goal a game in League One. So it just shows the difference that the transfer window has made to Lens. And, you know, when we look for explanations about why teams are getting better or worse, we often look at tactics or managers. Sometimes it is as simple as the fact they've lost players, the team has got weaker, they're having to play players who were not first choice players in the first half of the season. So Lens are in all sorts of trouble. Anybody who has watched them since the window will have noticed they've got weaker at the back. They're conceding a lot more chances. They're conceding a lot more goals. So right now, I cannot see Lens troubling a Marseille side who are much better all over the pitch. You mentioned they're winning games at home, Dan. It's something they struggled to do in the first half of the season, but they've actually got a lot better in front of their own fans. So given the strengths and weaknesses of these 2 sides, it should be a Marseille win. I thought they were pretty good at home last weekend, beating Nantes 2-0. They were quite patient in that game. They might need to be patient again this weekend. But for me, it's about that Lens defence. It's so weak at the moment that I think Marseille have got a great chance to get the points here. So Marseille all the way for me. It's my 2-unit play, and it's Marseille on the Asian handicap with a -0.75 goal start.
Similar play, bit bolder from Steve, just a lean. Steve?
This was actually nearly my 2-unit play as well. And it ends up
Hang
not
on,
even
how
being
can
an
it go from
official
2
pick.
unit to lean?
Well, I was gonna my 2-unit pick, which is coming up soon, was gonna be the hot dog. So I had space for a 2-unit play, and I'm actually really confident about Marseille winning. So -1 Asian handicap. James has pretty much said everything that needs to be said. I think Lens I'm a bit worried about them, to be honest. The game last week, when they lost at home to Le Havre, you know, I actually leaned under 2.75 goals there. I saw Lens 2-0 up, and I was about to tweet something how bad Le Havre are. And then, like, randomly, they came back into the game. It's like Lens can't stop conceding goals. Even against, if you're conceding 4 goals at home to Le Havre, you've got a big problem, in my opinion. 3 goals conceded against Nantes as well. That's not going to cut it against Marseille. And we know Marseille have had some problems at home this season. But I think it's fair to say they've improved at the Velodrome since the term of the year. So I think Marseille, at very least, will win the game. And it could be by a few goals, actually, if this Lens defence keeps being bad. So my lean here, officially it goes down as a lean, -1 Asian handicap on Marseille, but I am actually really, really confident about them. I will be betting on Marseille for this game because, Lons are definitely a clear fade at the minute.
My takeaway from the fact that it's dropped from a 2-unit play to a lean is the fact that Steve's plays are very strong this weekend. Yeah. I'm hopeful for a very good, profitable weekend. We've got plenty of leans from Steve on Saturday. We've got Germany and Spain just to cover. Steve, let's rattle through the Bundesliga Saturday leans first of all. First up, you've got Kiel against Stuttgart here, which is 9:30 Eastern. Kiel, the goals have dried up a little bit last couple of games, but not necessarily some of the expected goals metrics from their fixtures. What's the lean here?
Well, I'm going back with the goals for Kiel game, and I'm attacking the over 3.5 goal line at +130. It was interesting last Saturday. Every single away team winning the Bundesliga.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
And I think I mentioned it to you, and I was talking to someone else about this, and I said, could we get a clean sweep of away wins? And then this person said, well, Kiel are away from home. That's not going to happen, is it? Mm-hmm. And they went and won 1-0 at Union Berlin. But I think Union Berlin are a bit of a unique case. Well, they're not very good for a start. Struggle to score goals. So I suppose if they were going to get a clean sheet, maybe that was always one of the possibilities. But for the most part of this season, Holstein Kiel defence is an absolute shambles. And I think Stuttgart are the sort of team, they're struggling themselves to defend. So this could be a shootout. I'd imagine Stuttgart win, actually. Stuttgart should win the game. I'd be surprised if they don't get the win. But would you want to back Stuttgart at -200 here, considering the form that they're in? No, not for me. So Kiel may well be underrated with the books a bit. Over 3.5 goals. This could end anything. 3-2 to someone, 2-2 draw. You could also look at taking the over 3 goal line. But I think in this case, it would pay to be a bit more aggressive than normal. So over 3.5 at plus money, +130.
And the later game on the Saturday at 12:30 Eastern is Freiburg, who didn't win away. They drew 0-0, didn't they, at Augsburg, because it would have been a clean sweep. Every other away team did win. I was ready with my ACCA for the German games, but they
would have paid well.
But Freiburg would have let me down. I was going to work it out, but I didn't bother in the end. They're at home to Leipzig on Saturday, and you're fading Leipzig again here. Is that the main crux of the sort of lean here, or is it a bit of both?
Yeah, I think I really wanted to get an official pick, ideally, fading RB Leipzig again, because I feel like they're just not in a great phase. And Tino Bet is the lean here, by the way, -124 on Freiburg. And it nearly made the official pick list. Do you know what actually put me off for one? And it's very rare I get influenced by this. The actual head-to-head record. RB Leipzig have won the last 6 games against Freiburg, which sometimes doesn't mean anything, but RB Leipzig play the same way, whatever the manager is, the Red Bull system as we know it. So I'm just wondering, do Freiburg have a problem with that? It might be something. It was enough to just make it a lean rather than an official play. I am still going to bet here, Freiburg draw no bet. The other problem is, I've got to be honest, of all the teams in the Bundesliga, I probably watch Freiburg the least of all of them. So quite why that is, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, they're in good form. They've won 4 of the last 5. They've not conceded a goal since the 25th of Jan. And I feel like they're the right side here, actually. So on a full draw no bet security, it wouldn't be a surprise if it did maybe end a draw. But the last time they played at home, they beat Werder Bremen 5-0. That was a match I did see quite a bit of, and they dominated that. And I don't like the direction that RB Leipzig are going, but it's a bit unfortunate for me that this head-to-head popped up. And next week, I think they've got Dortmund, so I can't really take anything in that game, can I? I've got no chance of predicting Dortmund right. So it's a bit of a shame, but I think RB Leipzig are a fade at the minute.
Freiburg are having a great season, aren't they? I think they're a difficult team to get right, but Leipzig are even worse, I think. So we're going to play draw no bet. It's just a lean at -124. And a La Liga lean as well from you, Steve. This is Villarreal, who are away at Alaves. Villarreal, who didn't play on Monday. Their game against Espanyol was postponed because of the bad weather, unfortunately, that Spain is causing havoc again. But they are hard on the coattails of Athletic Club here in sort of Champions League race. What's the thinking here in their game away at Alaves?
Yeah, we didn't manage to get the Steve versus Dan match.
No, we didn't,
on Monday there because of the postponement. I do think that Villarreal would have won the match. That they're in good form at the minute, and the lean here has got to be draw no bet on Villarreal. I do stress tie no bet, draw no bet is required, not money line here, because Alaves do draw quite a lot of games, but they don't win many. They've had 2 wins in La Liga since the 20th of September. So, the last time they won at home was the 1st of November against Mallorca. They just don't win many games of soccer. It's as simple as that. And Villarreal are enjoying a very, very strong season. If La Liga gets fit 5 places for the Champions League, pretty sure they're going to get in, especially with that game in hand. At the moment they've got to try and get in the top 4, and Bilbao are only 4 points ahead of them, again with the game in hand. So, excuse me, I do believe I think they're a lot better than Alaves for a start. So I actually thought Villarreal would be minus money to win this game on the money line. I don't know what you think about that one, Dan, because it just stood out to me. And then, you look at it and there's been a lot of draws for Alaves, so perhaps that's a reason. But tie no bet here, minus 134, full security. I think it's a no-brainer selection, I really do, in terms of percentages.
I have to let viewers and listeners into a conversation that myself and Steve had just a couple of days ago, saying that we don't really want to start leaving things on the table from here on in for the season, but we've just picked a couple of leans that are tie no bet, Steve. you know what's going to happen. Listen, it's going to be a Freiburg and a Villarreal win, and we're going to sit here thinking, why didn't we just play with the money?
This one, I think you do need the security of the draw, though, because, like I say, Alaves, you look at their record, they do have a lot of tight games. They're in this relegation battle, and every point kind of matters to them. So this is an instance where I think it does make sense. But Villarreal definitely are by far better for me.
Let's get to Sunday's games and selections, shall we? Because there's a lot of really good selections from the boys and some leans. Official plays on Sunday. A good Sunday slate. We're going to kick off Serie A. James has got a couple of leans. Steve's got one for us. James, we're going to start with your good self and the game that's 10 a.m. Sunday, Eastern time, which is Napoli at home to Fiorentina. Now, Napoli without a win in 5 here. 4 draws, one of them obviously very good last weekend. But you're expecting a little bit of an upswing here from Antonio Conte's side. Look, by and large, they've done us proud this season, but they have had a dip recently.
Yeah, they have. But I am siding with them this weekend, Dan. They're quite short to win the game. I think they're minus 167 on the money line. So it's only a lean, but I'm going with them on the Asian handicap with a minus 0.75 goal start, which is available at minus 124. I was quite impressed with them last weekend. It was that big game against Inter. I think there would have been some nerves in the Napoli camp going into it because of defeat there, and it might have been all over for them in the title race, but they came from behind to get a 1-1 draw, and I think it'll be a relief for them to get that out of the way and still be in the title race. So, yeah, you've mentioned they have had a dip, no wins in 5. Is that a concern? Yeah, maybe. I tend to look at it as Napoli are probably too good to go too many more games without winning, and I think actually this weekend is a good opportunity now that they've got that almost de facto title decider out of the way to get back to winning. And Fiorentina I've not been particularly impressed by recently. I think their dip has probably been worse than Napoli's. They've lost 3 of their last 4. So only a lean from me, but I'm expecting Napoli, as I say, now they've got that draw against Inter, to go quite strongly now. And I can see them winning this. So it's only a lean, quite short, as I say, on the money line, minus 167. So I prefer them on the Asian handicap with a minus 0.75 goal start.
Biggest surprise for me last weekend was seeing Philip Billing pop up to score the equaliser for Napoli. When did he go there? What on earth's going on? Steve, you've got a lean in the Empoli-Roma fixture for us here. This is 1 p.m. on Sunday. Roma, top of every single full match table in Italy. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 matches. They're flying under Ranieri. But, of course, they are involved in European action as well. What's your thinking here?
Yeah, and I think it's a big problem for Roma here in the middle of a match against Athletic Bilbao. So I wouldn't be rushing to back Roma in this match. It'd be really interesting. You mentioned at the top of the show there about teams in the Champions League and then obviously Europa Conference. If you faded every team on, let's say, the main Asian line this weekend, I think you'd be in profit, because I think this is the round where teams are really serious about Europe. But maybe exclude PSV from that list because they're out, aren't they? But yeah, the lean here under 2.5 goals. Empoli against Roma. Empoli scored 5 home goals all season, which pretty much says it all. But I mean, the match last week, I got it wrong. Genoa Empoli, and I give Empoli some credit. They were bang up for the fight, and it was the cup result they got against Juventus. I think actually gave them a big boost. Looking at it, they had more confidence about them. It was one of those games I wished after about 20 minutes I was on the unders rather than Genoa. It was quite clear there wasn't going to be many goals in the game. There was like a fluky, scrappy goal that Empoli got in the first half, and then they should have won the game, but the goalkeeper made a horrendous mistake to let Genoa get an undeserved equaliser, really. But what was clear is Empoli are up for the fight. They want to keep it tight, and Roma away from home, and not as... You wouldn't be backing Roma with as much confidence away from home under Ranieri. But they have won the last 2 away games 1-0. We might see that again, a low-scoring game. Roma not quite at their best. Empoli will settle for a draw against... As a big underdog, they'll happily take a draw. 0-0 would do them perfectly fine. So I don't see a lot of goals in this game, Dan. I don't see a lot of action. And if the game pattern is very similar to last week with Empoli, then they're going to restrict Roma as much as they can. And Roma might be quite tired. So under 2.5 goals, this is at, is it minus 130? This one. I put it
minus
down on the
136
sheet,
is what you texted me.
Yeah. Minus 136 on a straight under 2.5 goal bet.
And finally, when it comes to the Italian action on Sunday, the big game is 3:45 Eastern. It's Juventus against Atalanta. Just a lean again here, but this, James, is obviously big in terms of the race to lift the Scudetto. And look, Juve, as you predicted last week, got that Asian line win, -1/4 they gave away on Monday night. They won that one late on. Good second half display. Atalanta have dipped a lot, unfortunately for me, because I've bet them here. What's your thoughts on this game and just generally on the Scudetto price movements?
Well, I think this is a fascinating game, Dan, between two teams who are just sort of on the fringes, aren't they, of the title race. Juventus were plus 3,300 before that win over Verona last weekend. They've come into plus 1,000, so that's 33-1 into 10-1. Do Juventus think they can still win the title? I think they do, actually, because they're only 6 points off the top of the table. It'll take a monumental effort to close that gap on Inter, but they're not in Europe, and Inter are in Europe, and obviously that applies to Napoli and Atalanta as well. They're not in Europe, but I think Juventus will think they're still in there. So for them, this is a huge game against one of the other top 4 sides. Only a lean for me in the end. I'm going on the tie here. It's one of those games where all 3 outcomes are plus money. Juventus are plus 125 to win the game. Atalanta plus 205. There's very little to pick between the teams. Obviously, we've seen a big improvement from Juventus in the last sort of 6 weeks. But this is a real test for them at home to Atalanta, who have been generally good, I think, away from home, certainly in how they've played. And I like it when the tie is the outsider of 3 in a game where there's very little to pick between the two sides. And that's the case here. I think plus 240 is a great price, similar to what you would have seen with Napoli Inter last weekend, where it ended in a tie because there's very little to pick between the two sides. So I wouldn't be surprised with a 1-1, something like that. It's only a lean for me, but expecting a close game. So I think plus 240 on the tie would be the play here.
Yeah, once Juventus have played Atalanta, they will have played the top 3 home and away. So their schedule against the very best sides in the league at the minute will be done and dusted. The 10-1, as you mentioned, Atalanta 9-1, and they've drawn 3 of the 5 against the top 3 so far this season. So a shrewd play. It's only a lean, but that's the big game in Italy on Sunday night local 3:45 Eastern. Now let's move to France, shall we? And the game between Le Havre and Saint Etienne, where we've got 3 units staked on this one. I just wondered when Saint Etienne would make a return to the running order with an official play with Steve, and it's returned, and how here. Now the boys have gone for the same play. Steve 2 you, James 1 you. Le Havre are favourites there. Saint Etienne nearly $2 on the money line. Steve, 2 unit play, come on.
Over 2.5 goals at minus 117. It has to be the play. I was going to use this as my hot dog, and I was going to go over 3.5 goals at plus 230. I am going to be laddering this game. I'm going to back over 3.5 and over 4.5 as well myself. because I just don't see anything other than a shootout. Simple as that. Saint Etienne are only playing one way under Eric Horneland. It's quite clear he can't really adapt. Is the squad good enough to play the way he wants it to play? Probably not, certainly not against the good teams. Nice were too good for them last week, 3-1 win. Didn't surprise me. I mean, I fancied Nice to win that game, and I did fancy the goals, but the odds weren't really where I wanted them to be. But I'm not going to refrain here from backing the overs because, the other also, I mean, this is a match between second bottom and third bottom in the table. So, yeah, it's one of my old theories, isn't it? When two teams at the bottom, desperate for points at this stage of the season, they're not thinking about drawing or not losing the game. They've got to win the game. I mean, Saint Etienne's season is almost on the line in the next 2 weeks. They're away to Le Havre and then they're away to Montpellier. They need to be winning those games. And I think the manager will take that approach. He's not going to come and settle for a point, is he? So, Le Havre, I mean, I don't rate them, but they've got a little bit of pluckiness about them. They have scored at least 1 goal in 8 of the last 9 games. I don't think they're an offense that would frighten me. But to be fair, that they are taking their chances and they're giving it a go. I mean, I 2-0 down to Lens last week. I never gave them a prayer, and they've ended up winning the game 4-3. So there's still some fight left in them, perhaps, and you got to respect that. So I think they're going to look at the game as a winnable clash, and it should be, a match between two poor teams, but also a good watch on the eye. Over 2.5 goals feels generous at minus 117, doesn't it? Especially with Saint Etienne involved, and I was very happy to make this my 2-unit play, and like I said, I am laddering it because I think this could go something stupid over. I really do. I don't know who's going to win. I hope Saint Etienne win. I want them to stay in the league because I think they'll be really fun next season under Eric Horneland if he brings some players in. But I can't really trust Saint Etienne on the money line, so I've got to go with the over 2.5 goals at minus 117 for my 2-unit play.
That's Steve's 2-unit play. James, just the 1-unit wagered. What to add to the reasoning?
Yeah, well, fully back everything Steve has said there. I'm going with the same pick, over 2.5 goals. It's my 1-unit play. Absolutely agree with Steve on Saint Etienne under Eric Horneland, the manager. He is a very attack-minded manager. He wants his players to get forward and take risks. Their games have been really entertaining to watch, but defensively, they've struggled individually and collectively. If you watch their games, they're making mistakes. They give their opponents way too much space, way too much time on the ball in their own half to Saint Etienne. So lots of problems, and some stats which I think would back up not only this play, which is over 2.5 goals, but also what Steve has said there about laddering and over 3.5 goals. In 2025, 6 of Saint Etienne's 9 matches have gone over 2.5 goals. 6 of Le Havre's matches have gone over 2.5 goals as well. Both teams are averaging more than 3.5 goals a game in 2025. I think it's 3.78 goals a game in Saint Etienne's matches, 3.7 goals a game in Le Havre's game. So Steve's right. It could be a crazy game this. We saw one with Le Havre last weekend where they won 4-3 at Lens. Became a shootout. Same thing is very likely here because there aren't any world-class attackers on show here, but the attackers are definitely better than the defenders for these two sides at the moment. So the price here looks all wrong to me on overs. I was gobsmacked when I saw it at minus 113. I think, as Steve has said, it's now minus 117, but it's pretty much the same thing. So great opportunity. Could have been my 2-unit play. And really strong chance we get an entertaining game here with lots of goals.
3 units wagered, over 2.5 goals. Le Havre against Saint Etienne. That's what we're hoping for at the weekend. Goals galore. And if you want to play over 3 on the Asian line, over 3.25, over 3.5 on the more regular goals line, then we would not put you off, as the boys have just explained. Got a little bit more French coming your way shortly, but I just want to take in Steve's same game parlay first, because it is Steve's favourite part of the show. It's the one part of the show that every other week he looks forward to most. And we're going to go to Germany for the same game parlay off the back of a winning same game parlay from James last week. Hoffenheim against Heidenheim is the game. It's 12:30, the kickoff time. Steve, talk us through the 2 elements that you've got for your SGP.
My favourite part of the show every other week when I'm not on SGP duty, Dan. But Do you know what we've been doing? I think we've done a lot better on the SGP recently. I think it's 3 wins out of 5, and the 2 losses we had actually should have won. And we've got this strategy. I'm being really boring here. You know what? I'm actually even going to ask your advice whether I should even stick this or go one line above. But this is Hoffenheim, Heidenheim, and the 2 elements are both teams score yes and over 2.5 goals at -141. I mean, is that acceptable? Should I go over 3.5 and both teams score yes at +155?
I'd keep it over 2.5. I'd keep it over 2.5.
Because
that'd be my advice.
It's got to the stage. It's got to the stage now with the SGP for me where I'm more bothered about not losing the bet rather than winning it as such. I just don't want to lose half a unit. It's cost me all year. You know, that profit loss screen that came up at the start of the show, nearly all of that loss from mine is the SGP, sadly. So I've got to do something about it, and it's must not lose. But I do like the goals in this game. Heidenheim. Going to get mixed up with my Heinz here, aren't I? Heidenheim are rock bottom of the table now, 15 points on the board for them. They did me dirty the other week against RB Leipzig, didn't I? I actually think they prefer playing away from home. You look at some of their results away. I mean, they got a 3-3 draw at Bremen. They scored twice at Leverkusen. They scored twice at Bayern Munich as well. So they almost away from home prefer it. I think it's because teams just believe they've got to beat them and they leave a lot of gaps at the back. So Heidenheim, one thing they don't like, Heidenheim, is pluckiness. They've got balls about them, this lot, They're not that good, but they'll give it a go. And Hoffenheim haven't kept a home clean sheet all season. I look back, I couldn't find one, in the league anyway. So we know they're not a great defensive side. They did keep a rare clean sheet last week, 1-0 at your boys, Bochum. But I watched that. Bochum should have beat them, I thought.
Yeah.
Like, Hoffenheim smashed and grabbed that 1-0 win. I don't trust the defence at all. They've got themselves out of trouble a bit. They're 8 clear of danger now. So that might help Hoffenheim in terms of the pressures off them, and they'll go for it a bit more. They won't be, stifled offensively and think about, a draw here. So I think both teams will fancy the win. I looked at over, I think the Asian goal line is 3 for this game, which I would happily back the overs in general. Yeah, over 3 goals at -108. But the more I looked at it, do I really see? I think if the match goes well over, both teams definitely score. Because I just don't think either defence can be trusted. So let's have this then, over 2.5 goals and both teams score yes. If you back over 2.5 goals on its own, I think it's -180, and both teams score yes is -177. So we get -141 here, which is maybe a bit of value on SGP terms. Keeping it simple, we got the 2-1 win either way on our side here, and that could be, if that ended 2-1 to someone, it wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, it's a boring pick, innit? -141, but yeah, I can't. I don't want to lose this SGP anymore. So we'll go with it.
There you go, Steve's confident choices on the Heim derby. Hoffenheim against Heidenheim, over 2.5 goals. Both teams to score yes, -141. We're going to finish the Sunday slate with the hot dogs of both of the cappers here. First of all, we're going to go to France and James, 3:45 Eastern. It's Nice against Lyon. Nice are minus money favourites, and how they're -210 here. But it's a welcome return to the show for a shot on target pick in France from James. And you were telling me that you were pleasantly surprised that all of the Liga games have got the shot on target markets priced up a little bit earlier than usual. So I can imagine you long into last night,
James specifically requested it, so
yeah, absolutely, And
I had nothing to do on Wednesday evenings, Dan. So
hour upon hour, printing them all off like a huge sort of big tome of sort of A4 going through an absolute lot. So this is the hot dog, because we've not had a shot on target hot dog for a while, and they are have been very profitable for us. I'm using the royal we. James, what have you got?
Yeah, it's one of the last markets that gets priced up on matches, which is kind of understandable. I think the market makers tend to look at team news and who's likely to play and all the rest of it. So we do tend to miss it recording the shows we do on a Thursday for a lot of the weekend matches because the prices just aren't there. But they are up earlier this week, which has been great. So I've been through all the games in League One this weekend. And there's 4 or 5 really interesting picks actually out there in this particular market. But for the purposes of the hot dog, where we obviously are going for 2-1 shots or bigger, plus 200. That there are rules on the hot dog. There's a couple of players, and they both happen to be in this game. So it's Nice Lyon, like you say, and the hot dog pick is on Baptiste Santa Maria of Nice. He's available at plus 200 to have over 0.5 shots on target, and I think it's a really good price actually if you've watched Nice recently. Santa Maria, centre midfielder. He's playing in there in a 3-4-2-1. I suppose it is maybe a 3-4-3 you could say for Nice. But what's interesting about the way they play is the front three are extremely mobile, and often a space will open up right in front of the central midfielders. So Santa Maria has clearly got license to get forward, get into shooting positions. He's not a prolific goal scorer, but you don't really have to worry about that. This is only the shot on target market. And he's been having plenty of them in recent weeks. If you look at the last 5 matches, I think he's had over 10, certainly attempts on goal. And in the last 2 matches, he's managed at least 1 shot on target for Nice in those 2 games. So at home, big game. I think Nice will be really positive here. That's their style anyway at home. And I think Santa Maria, I think he'll be fairly confident about his chances of getting into scoring positions because he's looked pretty good at that recently. So looking at the price, plus 200, I think is a little bit big based on what we've seen from Nice and from Santa Maria recently. So he's my hot dog pick for the week. And in the same game as a player we've flagged up before, it's Tessman, who will be going head-to-head in midfield with Santa Maria, playing for Lyon. We mentioned he's a similar sort of player, actually gets into good shooting positions. Tessman's managed to shot on target in his last 4 League One games for Lyon, and he's plus 210 this weekend. So he's actually a little bit bigger than Santa Maria. You might want to split your stakes across the pair of them. You might want to back both. Why did I go for Santa Maria over Tessman? Well, Lyon are playing in Europe, away in Bucharest on Thursday night. They may rotate. Not 100% sure if Tessman will start this weekend. And they are away from home against Nice. They might be a little bit more cautious. So I slightly favoured Santa Maria, but I think they're both good prices. Santa Maria plus 200, Tessman plus 210. They would be my picks in this game and in France this weekend in the over 0.5 shots on target market.
And just, James, to wrap up with Lyon, what's the story with Paulo Fonseca that's come through over the last evening or 24 hours?
Yeah, Paulo Fonseca, the Lyon manager, has been handed an extremely long touchline ban. It's actually until November, so you're looking at months here rather than weeks. This follows an incident in their league game at home to Brest last weekend where he approached the referee of the game extremely aggressively, let's say. There was no violent altercation between the two, but it came pretty close to that. And the mood in France recently has been that, we want to protect the referees. There's been a lot of dissent and criticism of them from senior figures in French football. And I think for the authorities, this was just an incident too far. So Fonseca has been hit with a really long touchline ban. He's also banned from the dressing room before, during and after Lyon matches, I think until September. Slightly shorter, but that's for the remainder of this season and the start of next season. So big personal blow for Fonseca. And it gives Lyon a problem about how to manage their matches in League One, because their manager, obviously you can take training and do everything during the week and pick the team, but he's banned from pretty much all official duties on match day. So real big story in France. Will it have an impact this weekend? It might do, because I think Lyon will still be finding their feet and trying to work out how to manage match days when their manager's not really allowed to be involved in it. So let's see what happens, but certainly a really big talking point.
Yeah. The reason I just wanted to flag it up, Stephen, obviously you'll be across this as well, is that sometimes we say, the manager's got a ban, it's only one game, they get instructions across, they deal with it, it doesn't really matter. But with such a long ban, you just wonder, players on the pitch, in-game decisions and so on. From a betting point of view, it might be just something to look at when we're looking at Lyon towards the end of the season. I mean, they might adapt quicker than whatever, but it just might be a little difference for something that bettors can maybe get a little angle in.
Well, I think at a lot of clubs it would be reason to actually fire the manager. If you've got a manager,
absolutely.
What's the point in having him if he's 9 months on the sidelines? I think this will probably be appealed and he'll get reduced maybe to the end of the season. That's the way I see it. That's the way these things often work out. Nice were on my shortlist this week because I think they'll beat Lyon in this game, especially with Lyon away in Romania on Thursday. But I think they're even money, which I thought was a little bit too short, actually. So I do like Nice to win the game. Do you know what the hot dog Santa Maria reminded me back in my analyst days, James? Because do you remember the club he first started at in France? It was a Tours FC.
Tours, wasn't it? Yeah,
and unfortunately, that club is now liquidated.
That's true.
Tours, yeah, they're now liquidated. They don't exist anymore. I think it happened recently. But I remember doing an analyst piece for them when I was at Football Radar. So brings back the memories. He was always earmarked as a great player early doors. So Baptiste Santa Maria. Maybe he was in your scouting net one back in the day, James.
Yeah, well, and he's an interesting one because he only actually moved to Nice in the window. I mean, it feels like he's already been there a long, long time. He was a really smart move from Rennes. There's been a lot of players move from Rennes to Nice in Ligue 1, so you sometimes lose track of who they're actually playing for. But they've picked him up and they put him in the team, and he's settled in really, really quickly. A very good pro. He's kind of done a good job, hasn't he, wherever he's played as Santa Maria.
If I let these two talk French football, you won't get any more picks for the rest of the show. True. So let's rectify that. Steve, hot dog, Real Sociedad against Sevilla, 4 p.m. Sunday. Sevilla haven't had a great season by their standards, as we know, but there has been signs of recovery since the turn of the year. Just one loss in La Liga in 2025. That was to Barcelona. What do we like for the hot dog?
Yeah, Sevilla, who they've hardly been talked about this season on the show, have they, by anyone? Yeah, it's obviously when I decided to change my selection in the Etienne game, it opened the hot dog window up, and I thought, let's go. I actually have an official play in all the 4 leagues this week. I quite like that because I'm going to back Sevilla here on the money line at plus 275, and I'm going to try and, for my hot dog for the rest of the season, I'm going to try and make it a money line play on someone or a straight goal line just to keep it simple. I think Real Sociedad could be vulnerable. It wouldn't be a Euro show without me taking on one of these teams playing on Thursday, would it? So this is the selection. Real Sociedad are obviously against Manchester United. Now, it's only Man United. Man United are not very good anymore. And Real Sociedad should be good enough to beat them over 2 legs. But it's probably still quite a big deal for them. You know, Man United are in town. It's a glamorous tie. It's a huge deal for the fans, and there could be a come down, whatever the result of the first leg. There could be a come down. Real Sociedad have actually lost 5 of the last 7 in La Liga, so I'm convinced they're all in on the cups. They've still got a chance in the Copa del Rey. They're going to have to win in the Bernabeu to make the final, but it could happen. And they've got every chance in the Europa League, especially with the final being held in the Basque Country itself. I think there's huge motivation for them there. So they may well, this will be the distraction of a game against a Sevilla side who have improved. 1 loss in their last 8 games, which was against Barcelona. In fact, they've only lost since early November. The only teams they've lost against in La Liga are Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, and Barca. We'll let them off that, you know. They're steadily going under the radar as an improving team. Got themselves into this mid-table battle. There's actually only 1 point separating the 2 teams. It's really congested in that La Liga mid-table. The manager's been doing a good job here. Xavier Garcia Pimienta, former Las Palmas boss. He has a knack of having decent, sort of overachieving his metrics at whatever club he's at. And they're not dramatically overachieving here, but it's a healthy overachievement, if you know what I mean. So I think his system is productive at both ends of the field, really. And this looked a big price to me. Yeah, they did win 4-0 in a recent away game at Valladolid. Okay, this is going to be a tougher game than Valladolid away, but that'll give them a lot of confidence. Tough to beat. Could be a draw here, but I really think Real Sociedad are there to be opposed in this round. They're not always that convincing after Europe. So at plus 275. This is my hot dog selection of the week. A bit of a random one, but they're quite a good thing sometimes, right?
Indeed they are. Monday musings to wrap things up. No official plays as we had last week when James correctly predicted Juve on the Asian line, but we've got an Italian game and a Spanish game we'll just take a brief look at for you if you're looking for something to bet on a Monday. Obviously we've got the live show on Monday anyway, but nice to finish off with some thoughts on the Monday games. James, Lazio Udinese, you think maybe overs could be a play in this one, 3:45 Eastern kickoff?
Yeah, I think so. It's actually fairly close to an official pick for me, this. I think if you look at the stats, you've got 2 teams in really good form here. Lazio have won 3 out of 5. Udinese have won 4 out of 5. And Udinese mid-table, not under any pressure. I think they can go here and have a real go. If you look at the stats, especially on Lazio towards over goals, it's really strong. They're top of the over 2.5 goals table in Serie A overall. 20 of their 27 games so far have gone overs. And 11 of their 13 home matches have had over 2.5 goals. So Lazio stats towards over is really strong. Udinese pretty strong as well. More than 50% of their games overall and more than 50% of their away games have had over 2.5 goals as well. So I think the price on overs, which is minus 118, fairly close to evens. The stats would say, you're looking more like 60, 70% of games really, based on what we've seen so far, have been overs. So it's only a lean, but I'm expecting an entertaining game. And I think overs here at minus 118 is definitely worth a look.
Any thoughts on Lazio Udinese or indeed Espanyol Girona? Steve, Girona plus 125 away at Espanyol. I quite like Espanyol. Draw no bet or plus a half on the Asian line here. Any thoughts on the Monday games?
Well, I was going to say you would be the man for the Espanyol game, Dan. I know you're quite a big fan of them at the minute. They are.
Are you putting them into the bottom
to be fair, at home, I think Espanyol are worth respecting, actually. So I'll give you that one. I'd probably side with them, maybe in a low-scoring type of game. I mean, they didn't play last week, so we don't know what the sort of form line is as much. In the Italian game, I tell you what really stood out to me last week, having watched quite a bit of Udinese of late, is Florian Thauvin, former Marseille man, former Newcastle player. He's still one hell of a baller. He completely controlled the game. There's not many players like this anymore in the game, actually. Like a roaming playmaker, if you want to call him that. But he's still got brilliant technical skills, brilliant mental and intelligence. And physically, he's still got a little bit of pace about him at times. Little bursts of acceleration. So how about Florian Thauvin over 0.5 shots on target, plus 123 at the minute with Bet Rivers. He's going to be on penalty duty.
Are you sure about that?
The guy... Well, yes, that's sorted now. That is sorted. They got a penalty in that game against Parma, and the guy who, what's his name?
Luca.
Deliberately picked up the ball, made a bit of a statement to hand the ball over to Thauvin. So I think Tauvin's going to be on penalty duty, but he actually could have scored 2 or 3 goals in this game. I just think on a technical level, it reminded me how good a player he is. He should have had a better career. He should have won more in his career. And I think he could give Lazio some problems here. They have to deal with him. Plus 123 for a shot on target. He will get opportunities.
Yeah, if you've not seen the incident, Lorenzo Lucas scoring for Udinese against Lecce a few weeks ago from the spot, have a look at that on YouTube. It's mildly amusing. But Thauvin is back on penalty taking duties because he did score last week against Parma. Brilliant stuff, Steve, James. Thanks for your company. Good luck to one and all. We'll keep everyone updated via our X feeds. That's the Wrap for Betting Weekly Extra Time European show. We're going to be back next week for Picks Plays, Hot Dogs. Don't forget, 11 a.m. Eastern every midweek day for our live show. Follow us at Because We Win. Sign up to the newsletter, Betting Weekly Studios. I think, have we got sort of weekend newsletter, Steve, maybe in the pipeline? Do you know anything about that or not? Am I throwing you a low curve there?
Well, this is where rumours start, isn't it?
I don't know.
Breaking news.
I mean, look, listen, the midweek newsletter has been doing well. The newsletter has been doing so well, hasn't it? That maybe there is a demand for a weekend special.
Yeah,
let's watch this space. You've obviously opened the floor up there, Dan.
Do you know what? I think I've got that. I think I've got that completely wrong. Anyway, follow us at Because We Win. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're inching towards 8,000 followers, and Nigel was telling me we were very close to the 1 millionth view. But he won't tell me what sort of prize we'd give for our 1 millionth viewer. Anyway, that is your lot for the week. Good luck over the course of the weekend. Hopefully it's a profitable week across the European leagues. From all of us for now, it is goodbye.